know where there's some. Right here in the hall clerk.
No, Molly, not in there. I have a
Hello and welcome back to episode 3 of the GE 514 All-American 5 radio restoration. I haven't done much since you were last here. I did put a protective piece of cardboard on the speaker so that I won't run my fingers through it by grabbing it like this. I might run something through there, but there's not much I can do about that. What I want to do next, there are two approaches we could do. We could just dive in and start replacing capacitors. I don't want to do that. I want to clean this up a little bit. And I want to make sure that I am right about what this black covering is concealing from us. I'll take this brass spring gizmo off. Yeah, I was right. That's just grounding this shield. It's making sure the shield is touching the chassis. So I'll put that in our parts bin. Then we'll take this part off right here. It looks like, to me, that with these two screws off, it should lift off and then come out this way. It might get in the way of these wires right here, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Long screw. Probably another long screw. Then this should lift off. Oh, drat. It's caught right there by the speaker. So before we can work on this, we have to get this off. And unfortunately, in this case, it means loosening or removing the speaker mounting, which is where? Well, there's an L-shaped bracket right here, well, it's L with a bent top, that's holding the audio transformer. And it goes down here and then runs along the top of the metal chassis, and I can see one screw right here holding that in place. So I'll take that one out. Hopefully the speaker will be loose. Yes. Now, because the speaker's loose, we have to be a little more cautious with it. And make sure it's not flopping around and being injured. Big glob of grease. There's a big glob of grease under there somewhere. How strange. Oh, it's well, I don't know. I was going to say it's probably out of the tuning condenser. I don't know. Okay. Speaker is loose. Now this should come off. Just like that. Okay, this is unique to GE as far as I know. Here's the phenolic. The phenolic refers to the material this brown thing is made out of. There's the tube sockets. The tube plugs into there. And the wires that connect to the tube are coming up through and being soldered on here, these points. So these are solder points for each pin on the tube. That's really interesting. Never seen that before. I don't know why GE did that.
Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt our program of dance music to bring you a special bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News.
After a bit of research, I discovered that GE was this is built in '53 prior to circuit boards, but still doing point-to-point wiring inside. And in the olden days, olden days being prior to 1953, to do point-to-point wiring, you would do what they did here. They would run a wire, loop it through a connector, and then solder it in place, and then loop the other end of the wire, same wire, and solder it in place. And that took the assembly folks, usually women, a fair amount of time, and GE came up with this idea. What if we make a socket, these sockets right here, that have, I'll show you a close-up while I'm talking here. But these sockets, each of these pointed things, when it was put onto the chassis of the radio, had splits up 3 or 4 or 5 splits up the side of each one of these points. And then from the bottom of the radio, you could just shove wire in there and it would go up through the top and get caught by the pressure of this cone-shaped thing. And then once you had all the wires in place, and now when you're doing assembly, you're just going, let me back out a little bit here. Now when you're doing assembly, you're just poking it in, poking it in, poking it in. For most of it, you still have to solder these bits. But for the tubes, all the point-to-point wire is just poking it into the holes, like that one right there. Like that one right there. So if you wanted to add a wire to this particular socket at that particular point, just jam the wire in there so it would come out the top over here. And then once it's all assembled and you have all the point-to-point wiring done for all the sockets, but before these three things are mounted, someone would take this entire chassis, or they would put it on a machine, one or the other, and the chassis would be dipped down like this into a vat of molten solder, and that would automatically heat and solder each one of these all at the same time, so that the assembly person didn't have to hand solder each one of these. And that also explains why GE included this statement right here. When servicing the mechanized chassis, and that's what they call this, a mechanized chassis, time and effort otherwise spent to remove the shield, heat pin connections, and free the components may be spared. A neater job can be done without the risk of damage to the tube socket by using the following method. Cut the wire off. So what you wanted to do if you had to replace a component or a wire was they suggest, GE says, just cut it right here, replace this wire that goes to the output transformer, and then in essence, do a J-hook. They're advising do a J-hook right here, and then make sure you insulate it after you've done that. And in looking at it, and in thinking about how to unsolder anything here, because I think we're faced with this 50C5, 50B5 business, I think I'm going to have to do that. I don't particularly want to heat these guys and try to pull the wire back out, get the solder out of this connection and pull the wire back out. That's a lot of territory to solder, and I'm afraid that somewhere this is a phenolic sandwich, and the wire runs from this pin right here over to here, and I'm afraid that getting this too hot might break that connection. So I think I'm going to follow GE's advice in any further work I do on this, and not try to desolder anything from here, but rather do J-hooks on the back. Now, one thing to notice is right here, there's a wire. These are a couple of wires sticking out the side of this particular pin. This is the 50C5, where the 50C5 is supposed to be. They put a 50B5. My speculation is that that's the reason this is so sloppily done, is somebody rewired it and shoved wires up from the bottom side up through there, forced them up through there, leaving this kind of mess right here. I would guess that's what happened. And also this big blob of solder sitting right on top of this one. It doesn't exist anyplace else here. So I think GE was ahead of its time. This is a kind of weird to me thing to do, but it makes sense in terms of forwarding the automation of manufacturing radios at the time. Shortly after this, they moved on to printed circuit boards. And this idea probably, I would guess, it's just a guess, probably lasted 2 or 3 years at best before they moved on to printed circuit boards. So, back to your regularly scheduled programming. So, one of the things that goes onto our to-do list is to reverse that modification, is to take out whatever this radio repair person did and put in a 50C5, which is what this radio is supposed to be working with. Okay, that's future stuff. For right now, we've got some cleaning to do.
The makers of Johnson's Wax.